Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third episode of the Anonkun Community Podcast. I am your host, DM-Casual, runner of Persona Quest, among other things. Today with us, we have aCowboyNamedSue, Grimmand, and SPUDS of the Apocalypse. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and what you run?
I'm SPUDS. I've been playing Quest since 2008 or something. It's been great, but I'm gonna go start my own quest in like a month or two, and that's gonna be even better. Until then, I'm just a general plebeian.
I'm Grimmand, and I guess the quest I'm most well known for is Whose Quest Is It Anyway? Which I took all of the common advice given in QST on how to run a good quest, and I decided to do the exact opposite of that, just for shits and giggles.
Alright, and I'm aCowboySue, and I run Melancholic Quest. Oh, shit, what happened? Okay. Melancholic Quest on QST, and oh shit, what's my other one? Here Comes May on Anonkun, and I'm a little baby newbie QM. I didn't come in until Quest was created, so...
Yeah, I'm I used to run Lich's employee quest back in 2012. I don't run much else since, just only been a player.
All right. Well, pleasure to meet you all. Pleasure to have you all here. Pleasure to see you again, E. Let's get right into it then. Last
Aren't you
episode,
gonna introduce yourself?
I did. I'm DM-Casual. I run Persona Quest.
Oh yeah.
That's about all there is to me.
Oh yeah, we need to shill, apparently.
No, we don't.
Is that saying at the end? Okay, alright. I have no idea what we're doing structure-wise.
Yeah.
We have no structure. Why would we have a structure?
I'm just waiting on y'all.
Structure is topics now.
Okay, anyway, DMC, go. Questions.
Well, actually, I had an idea of a topic to start us out on that. From our last conversation a week ago, we started a discussion about using dice in quests, and I thought that was something we could mine for a while, both in aspects of using dice, and then just the wider topic on running a quest as a game versus running a quest as a story versus perhaps running it as a simulation. So I guess I'd start us off with just the general question of, are you a fan of dice usage in quests?
I mean, I'd say I am, considering I tried to make a video game-esque random generation system for damage and hit percentage in one of my quests. It ended up being a huge clusterfuck and way more trouble than it was worth, and I'm really proud of it.
I sometimes use dice, but not really. I mean, I'm just new to the scene anyway, so I don't think I could come up with a smart way to use dice, and I don't feel comfortable relying on dice too much anyway, so I feel like a good QM knows how to use dice, and that's great, but that's not me. I just use them occasionally, barely.
I think dice are ultimately it's an interesting topic in many ways. When you use dice, you have to think about what is a quest actually meant to do in general. What sort of things make a quest good? 3 things are important in quests, essentially. It's bringing in new players, making players invested, and finally it is making players immersed in the world. How do dice help with these various things? The dice help make people invested because they think, well, I'm not sure about what the outcomes of my actions are. That means I have to plan more carefully in how I'm going to accomplish them. Arguably, they can also make people less invested because they think no matter what I do, everything will turn out fine eventually.
Plus, though, there is the element of having a hype critical success or even a hype crit fail that can just blow up a thread and affect the story forever.
Exactly, and that brings us more to the second one, which is bringing in new players. Because if there's like a big change which happens in the quest as a consequence of some random dice failure or whatever, and the major characters or maybe even the main characters die, then that's something which will be discussed in other quests, which will bring them to the quest where it happens.
Yeah, that actually almost happened in one of my quests in the very first, not very first thread, very first fight on Cyber Demon Quest, my first attempt to run an actual quest on QSD, where the enemy that they were fighting, literally, if any one of the dice had rolled one number higher, then the main character would have been one-shotted in thread 2, and that would have been the end of it. So, I mean, it's tense. Dice are really good at tension and generating tension where it really shouldn't be, or maximizing where it could be. And that's one thing that I do like about them, is that they kind of take it out of your hands. But it's also one of the problems with them.
I do think there is a limitation in how dice are usually used in quests, because there is an assumption that the main character will not die, and the quest is structured around avoiding main character death. This is one of the places where Worm, while not a quest, is somewhere to take inspiration from. In Worm, the writer rolled a d4, and any time a 1 came up, he rolled a d4 for every character in his story at the time, and whenever a 1 came up, he killed them off in a big Kaju attack on the main character's hometown. He did this for the main character as well, and he had backup main characters and backups for the backup main character as well. And that's something I think quests should do more often. Just take it out of the QM's control and see where everything goes.
I mean, yeah, I can get that whole idea.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds brutal. And by brutal, I mean that's something that I want to pull on my players now. Well, they're not in quests that I run often because they're invested in those characters. But if I ever start a new quest, I'm definitely going to crib that system. Just randomly killing people off.
Angry typing noises.
Sorry.
Well, Sorry, continue. I'll wait.
No, I'm sorry. I was apologizing because I was typing.
Okay. I think that ultimately it's not something that exact thing isn't something you can do in a quest, or you can do it, but then you have to do it outside of the sphere of the main characters, because you have to give players agency to an extent. But the general philosophy of not caring if your entire plot line gets messed up, and sort of, even if it writes you into a corner, you can just write yourself out of it later, is something I think people should be inspired by to a limited extent.
Yeah, I definitely think the ability to write yourself out of a corner is one of the essential abilities for a QM, unless you're the kind that literally writes it like a computer choose your own adventure where you've accounted for everything. And I don't think I've read or even heard of any quests that use that format, maybe one or two, where they don't get choice. They've already planned for every contingency. Yeah, Grim?
Every quest that doesn't have write-in options.
That's fair.
Well, I mean, not every quest has explicitly planned out every non-write-in option. There are write-in options. There are original options put forth by the QM where they haven't considered the consequences. It's just an effect of having several places the story could go. They don't necessarily plan. They can't necessarily plan everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem with that kind of writing, though, where you're just writing entirely by the seat of your pants, is that, at least for me, when I used to do that a lot, you'll hear me talk a lot about the good old days, but that got really exhausting. and I started quests and I didn't really have a plan of what I was going to do with them, and I dropped them, and it became kind of like a joke around me that where you could suggest a quest and then I would just make it. But that kind of writing really takes a special kind of insanity to do. It's just not plan. Like nowadays, I plan most of them.
This is the part where I put Cornwallis, because that is literally how he writes his quests.
Who is that?
Cornwallis. He runs the Fate Grand quest on aCo.
I'll look into that. What were you saying, E?
Oh, it's just not fun to write something that's completely arbitrary. Like, going back to using dice to decide shit. The QM needs some level of things being out of their hands, both via the players and via dice. Otherwise, you're just like vomiting your imagination onto 4chan or Anonkun, or if you're subhuman on space battles, etc. I forgot what kind of point I was making, but completely arbitrary quests are shit, basically. Someone who's run completely arbitrary quests.
They can be fun if they're the ones that like last a single thread, like
yeah, that's about
just the random crazy, just any suggestion goes sorts of quests. Those are fun, but they're fun in short bursts, and not like.
Or if it's entirely like a comedy thing, I suppose you can do it.
Yeah, just taking advantage of the medium that you're in.
To some extent, I think that's the sort of you can solve those problems by communicating with your players essentially what you want to achieve while writing the quest. I mean, they can still go against it, but they will have some sort of awareness unless you specifically piss them off. Then all bets are off.
I remember this one time in a quest where I used a mystery box option to get Annans to pick that specific option, but then I didn't actually have anything planned for that option.
What'd you end up doing?
I don't even remember. I'll have to look it up later.
That's fair. Anyway, so moving on, kind of. The other topic that I had in mind was one that came up sort of, but we didn't really explore, was the idea of simulationism versus, what's it called? Gameism.
And like story, right?
Yeah, and storytelling. Do you want to tell a quest as like a voyeuristic experience of like living through a person, or do you want to write a quest to tell a story or to play a game? So, I mean, if I can go first on this, I typically write quests for game purposes, for entertainment purposes, and I try to make them kind of gamey, but a little simulationist. I've been leaning closer towards simulationism recently in Persona Quest, but that's also just a side effect of the game's format being time-based and presented like a visual novel.
I mean, like...
No, you go first.
Usually for me, I sort of lean more towards gameism, but that's mostly because that's the style of quest that I'd followed beforehand. So
I was gonna say with mine, I'm probably more narrative over like, especially gameism. I just never did a lot of tabletop beforehand, so like when I first saw Quest, I was leaning more toward choose your own adventure kind of stories rather than, like with the whole rolling dice and all that. So mine are probably more narrative or simulation. I don't know, like how exactly you would.
A simulationism is when you create a world and you try and create like the obvious results of actions are what happens. A narrative means that you have like you want to tell a story specifically. It's not necessarily a world that the players move through.
All right, yeah. So I'd say both my things are more narrative. I mean, I only like roll like once every couple threads, if even that. So,
I would say one big difference. One of the easy ways to tell a difference is what would happen if you say stab someone. In a game like Quest, you would just deal hit point damage, and then the fight continues. In a simulationist quest, they would probably drop to the ground screaming because you just stabbed them and probably die. And in a narrative quest, the stabbing would do really whatever you feel like the stabbing needs to do at the moment. Like, it could do absolutely nothing, and they just shrug it off, or you could kill them.
I think these terms aren't very useful. They're taken directly from tabletop games, and it shows. Rather, I think that if you're going to have a relevant thing, then your spectra should essentially be flexibility in action, like how broad are players' choices? How many different options do players have to choose between, and how few? And then a sort of gamist, non-gamist spectra as well.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with the whole fact that they're based off tabletop game terms, because questing as a whole is rooted very heavily in tabletop games and tabletop game culture.
And choose your own adventures.
That too. I guess, yeah, as Ilwars mentioned in the chat, it's a scale of gameplay versus story, and how gameplay-ish you want it to be, how story-ish you want it to be. Any thoughts, E?
No, not really. No, I was going to say I prefer some combination of narrativism and gamism. Like you've got a narrative and then you have gameplay elements to support that or to cover combat and so on. But at its core, you're telling some sort of story.
Because I was
It's not
gonna
just
say, like,
sticking around.
having just like gameplay or whatever. I don't know. I feel like that'd be kind of boring, especially when you're playing with a bunch of other assholes. Like with a video game, whatever, if the story sucks, as long as the gameplay is fine, that's like you doing it. But I just feel like if you're sharing like a shitty story with like good gameplay, but you're playing with a bunch of other assholes, I wouldn't enjoy that. I don't think. But just me.
Well, the way I see it, for the Annans, it's kind of like a big game of everyone is John.
I think I think that when it comes to gamist quests, you should sort of pursue what some call the results of the theory of collective intelligence, because in a lot of if you look at hard mechanics quests, there's going to be 5 players, something like that, who are sort of calculating every single thing possible, and they have a sort of distance, and they coordinate, and they sort of figure out small pieces of the system involved, and they sort of achieve a collective system mastery. And there's an appeal to that, in that you can see a character and the challenges they face and see them succeed in spite of extreme odds. That's something you don't get in low gamist quests, fundamentally, because, you know, everything is educated by the DM, success or failure.
Unless the DM, of course, wants to make an underdog quest. But that's a separate topic entirely.
But then the player's existence as an underdog is still arbitrated by the DM or QM.
Yeah. Personally, I think a lot of the appeal of quests is that, as Sue said, you're playing a game, as Sue and I think Grimmand said, you're basically playing a game of everyone is John, or what is it called?
Yeah, it's everyone is John, where
you're
all
playing
the
a game
players
of
are wrestling for control of a single character, trying to live a normal life. But why do that?
Yeah, you're basically playing a collective game of everyone is John with a bunch of assholes that you don't know, who are usually counterproductive to the end goal. And that kind of chaos is fun. That's why games like Goat Simulator became popular, is because people are generally attracted to funny, weird shit happening. And quests are a very good outlet for funny, weird shit happening, especially quests with dice, because then they can just have weird shit happen at the whim of the dice instead of the whim of the writer.
I think funny, weird shit is probably why the original Whose Quest Is It Anyways was as popular as it was. Because with 3 people writing it, one of which actively trying to derail what the other 2 did, it made for a lot of unexpected things.
Sounds like EEEAUGH.
Wow.
That was Harold before he just disappeared from the face of the earth.
Yeah, you would think that an experience like that, where you're just trying to wrestle control over some character with a bunch of dumbasses that don't agree with you, would be completely unamusing. But for some reason, it's become this whole subculture of questing, and I don't know. I don't know what I think about that, except that it's kind of astounding that a bunch of
wrestling with other players is the worst part of questing, especially when you've got huge divisions in the player base, like waifu wars, for instance.
Oh boy, waifu wars.
I don't know
It's nice to have some direction over a story, but
I actually enjoyed like the infighting and the chaos and the disagreements and the conflicting plans over what should be done is some of what I think is the appeal to Quest.
it's fun at a level, but
Not
once
on
it
all
goes
of
past
them.
that, like say with waifu wars, when it becomes some huge fucking quest consuming argument, then it's completely insufferable. But lower level arguments are fun, yeah.
I remember in Gobble's new quest on QST, there was like lighthearted waifu debate that devolved into discussing what the main character's stats would be in Fatal, specifically the anal circumference stat.
And how did that turn out? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay, I think it's better that you didn't. Yeah. I think part of it is probably part of it is like this sort of catharsis factor that you get with like if you say play a violent video game and get to shoot a bunch of people. It's like but it's on a different level in that you get to have these arguments and fights with people, but they're not really arguments with any substances, but you can still feel like you win because sometimes you do win the waifu wars. So it's kind of like emotional argumentative catharsis, where you get a bunch of people on your side and you go, no, this girl is better, and people cede to your point.
Honestly, I think anything that has to do with multiple romantic partners kill quests. That's part of why I should post about polygamy in main chat all the time. That's most of it, actually. Most of the reason.
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't read enough quests to know if that makes them devolve or not, so I'll just trust your judgment on this one that it's bad.
No, it definitely does, believe me.
It definitely does.
Harems are absolutely sickening, and they derail a quest into becoming a waifu collecting simulator.
And it just, I don't know, it feels kind of cheap, like a shortcut to please everyone, but then like no one's really happy.
Yeah, because then you don't actually get to spend any time with any of the characters. Like maybe you get one or two main waifus even in the harem, but they're still you've got like, I don't know, half a dozen characters that you've got to deal with on top of the rest of the cast to move the story along. It just doesn't work.
Plus, it doesn't. I would imagine that the harem options doesn't really open a lot of room. Like people can feel free to argue this with me because I don't know a ton of what I'm talking about, but it just doesn't open a lot of room for emotional intimacy between characters. That's important for building up the characters as people. Where you'll have like, you can't really have those one-on-one moments because then you're taking away from the rest of the waifus.
Exactly, it's character blow. Like everybody in chat is saying, when you have too many characters, the whole quest just grinds to a fucking halt. So either you need to get rid of them somehow, like they just leave. That's one solution, but that's not specific to harems. Ultimately, any quest which has several romanceable options is going to have a sort of quest decay, where the quest gradually gets slower and slower since people get more and more invested in completely separate characters and want to invest themselves in those characters. And this is especially true of female characters, since male characters, they kind of say, well, I feel like if I spend too much with this character, he'll get old and it'll get boring. So they lay off. They're fine. They're more fine with spending time away from male characters than they are with female characters. And that's like basic neuropsychology or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's like
Gotta stop that NTR.
No, it isn't that. It really isn't that.
I mean, I guess it's also just a thing with the general media depiction of males versus females, in that in a video game, for example, you will mow down, like a first-person shooter, you will mow down dozens of male soldiers, and no one will really bat an eyelash. But you know what happens when they have female enemies. You've all heard that song and dance.
Well, it's less that people. No, it's an effect from media. It's more that there are underlying psychological bases. Like it's something in our brains which makes us think that way, which affect how people write both video games and movies and ultimately quests as well.
On the topic of gender in video games, I just want to point out the time that Anita Sarkeesian tried to say that you couldn't see Batman's butt in Arkham Knight, but didn't actually play the game because you get a lot of action shots of Batman's butt.
That's completely off topic, thank you.
Stop, you autist.
Yeah, I don't think anyone gives a shit.
By this point,
the place.
By this point, no one's surprised by those kinds of things from her. So
I don't give a shit if nobody gives a shit.
Damn.
We give a shit. Wait.
You took up a valuable 30 seconds there. We could have talked about...
Anyway, questions, right? DMC, questions?
I mean, yeah, sure. Let's go to the question room then.
How do you communicate?
Two questions.
What'd you say, E?
How do you communicate with players? Is one of the questions here that I thought was interesting.
I don't, because they don't talk in chat.
That's fair.
That's because
because your quest is shit.
It probably is, yeah.
No, your quest is shit because you don't get them to go in chat. It's like the cause is reversed here. Your quest is shit because people don't discuss it, which is ultimately because you don't invest them enough, and not being able to build player investment is symptomatic of a bad quest. So you've basically fucked up from the start.
Do you think that, Spuds, think there's any way for someone to fix that? Or do you think that's a symptomatic problem? Like, once it starts, you can't stop that ball from rolling?
You can. I mean, as long as you have some players, you can start getting them invested again. But it's more difficult than if you go from the start. I mean, there are lots of tricks that you can invest your players from the start. And for an example, I've been thinking, because I have like a wild bow fetish or whatever. I'm really big into wild bow. The guy who wrote
you have
Worm.
really shit taste.
Yes,
what?
Yeah, I know. The guy who wrote Worm. I'm a big fan of his, and especially the second novel he wrote, Pact, is especially like, if I ever did a quest, it would be heavily inspired by that novel specifically and how he does things there, because he constantly takes up what people talk about in his comment section inside the story itself. And because it's like the thoughts of people in the comment section are the thoughts of various characters in the quest, because if they in the story, because if they have questions, then it's reasonable for people in the story to have questions as well, is what I think he thought. So he takes up those questions in the story, and that's a way to get people invested. Like in quests, the main character is supposed to represent the audience to an extent, right? So if you take up, like, if you make some of those questions be questions in the mind of the protagonist, and you, like, instead of having long questions and answers segments, you put in those questions more naturally in the middle of the various story segments. Because as much as I like Promise of Power for a lot of reasons, its questions and answers segments are sometimes seriously painful.
You gonna say something, Sue?
Okay, about the current question?
Yeah. How do you communicate with your players?
Alright, so when I had my first quest, right, I didn't know a lot of what I was doing. And one of my players was like, hey, you should have a chat for circle jerking. Like, that's literally what he said. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if this is normal, but okay. So I ended up making a Discord room for me. And that was like about the same time I joined the QTG room too. And so that's how I always forget about my Twitter. I talk to my aCoon people like in chat, but it's usually between those two.
I usually also do it through aCoon chat, but communication in particular is basically just making sure they get engaged, stringing them along. Like if someone says something that, because I don't plan that much ahead, I plan ahead more than I used to, but not 100%. If someone says something and I think like, oh, that theory is a good idea, like I'm not gonna say I'm just gonna outright take it, but I am gonna post a cat smiley face and make everyone panic because that theory included a main character dying. So basically, you have to keep them thinking that you're listening to what they're saying, which is a thing that I do. I'm not going to say that you have to keep them thinking that you're listening and then say, oh, I'm really not. Because you have to listen to them, and otherwise your quest will fall apart and become shit. But that's another thing that someone in the chat mentioned. TDS said, I suspect some QMs take player theories and retroactively make them be true. And I know from reading about it, and I know no one's going to like me bringing this up, but Andrew Hussey of Homestuck Infamy used to do that a ton. He even said on his Formspring back before he had a hissy fit and took it down, 99% of calling it is really influencing it in disguise. So I don't know what you guys think about that, the whole retroactive foreshadowing thing.
That's effective as fucking quests, but I forgot what I was going to say there. Anyway, Hussey is good for stealing curing tips from, to be frank.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. Go, someone else.
Well,
no one has anything? Okay.
I always have more to say, but I wait for other people to talk first. Yeah, I could talk for the entire podcast, really. I mean, I don't need you guys. Nobody else has any more?
I guess not.
I had a really good idea, and then I forgot it the moment I opened my mouth. So
that sounds like everyone on Anonkun, so.
Damn.
In any case, when it comes to communicating with players, there's a good advice that people used to follow back when TG was king or whatever. It's that don't engage the meta directly. I mean, don't actually speak to your players. Don't talk to them out of character. Generally, it's a bad idea.
I mean,
no one listens to that advice these days, though.
Yeah, no,
You've got Discords, you've got the Anonkun chat. I mean, even on TG, people would regularly just chat with players. Or not chat, I suppose, but discuss things with players after the quest or even in the middle of things between votes and so on.
I mean, I think it's fine as long as you make it like a specific section or whatever. You say, well, now the quest isn't running anymore. I'd like to discuss certain things and ask some questions. And I think that's fine. As long as you don't just talk in the middle of the quest about some
I suppose you can chat a bit, I think. But I can make a few posts. But stopping a quest to just chat about shit is a bit much. Doing a Q&A session at the end of a quest, as you said, that's probably a good idea. Like establishing a format.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree for Anonkun in particular to like the whole remain in character and never post outside of the story sort of thing. Just because Anonkun has a chat which is designed to facilitate discussion, and with a good nudge, you can easily send it spiraling for hours, like a pendulum. But on QSD itself, I generally, the only time I'll ever like break a character, quote unquote, is to answer questions that that are important, but I couldn't reasonably answer in character, like questions about the system that I'm using in Cyber Demon Quest. I would break a character to answer those, but make sure it was separated with like brackets and it's in a different font. But yeah, I generally agree with the basic conceit that talking out of character in a quest is bad when you just kind of throw it in. But I don't agree that it should be a thing that never ever happens, because sometimes it's important for clarifying things that can affect player decisions.
Also, another thing I've been thinking about when it comes to communicating with your players is, like, after every vote, you go through all of the rather during a vote, while people are voting, you go through discussions from the previous vote and so on, and from the last story post, and you post it into the thing itself, like into the quest itself, as just during this time people discussed this and this and this, and you summarize it, and that makes it easier for newer players to come in and sort of get a feeling for what happened. And it also means that people can go back and investigate what have been discussed before. It generally raises player intelligence and player investment. I theorize. I have no actual proof that's true, because nobody has ever done it.
And nobody really does studies on questing anyway, just because they're such a niche topic.
I do, which I don't think there's anybody else. No.
What the fuck is niche? Who the fuck says niche? It's niche, isn't it? Let me look that up on Google.
Yeah, it's niche. I've been saying it like that.
I heard niche all
Holy
my life.
shit, it's niche on Google. Maybe that's just the way you fucking Americans
I
pronounce
always
it.
said niche as well. So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I've always called it niche.
I mean, if it
Niche-y.
makes you feel better, I say water instead of water.
Oh, fuck
Water.
off.
Fucking
That's disgusting. Alright, here's a
No,
good
you-
question, actually. What's the future of questing in general, and what role will aCowboy play?
honestly, most likely, aCowboy will be a very minor role in the future of questing. The future of questing will probably be dominated by space battles. It's inevitable. We're fucked.
I think it's going to die off on 4chan entirely. I mean, the mods have been slowly cracking down on it over the years, forcing them into TNG, getting rid of Smut, now onto QST. And QST is a dead fucking board, mate. On
It's very
QTG,
clear.
I forgot QTG dying as well.
Yeah, it's
I
very
mean,
clearly
QTG
can't
is...
afford it.
Yeah. Even QTG itself these days is slowing down further and further, and you can sort of take that as a measure of QST as a whole. There haven't really been any major... Oh, actually, that's a complete lie. There have been a couple of quests started recently, got some players, but I don't know. It's just slowly dying on 4chan. Anonkun seems to... What was that?
I mean, like, the ones that start off like with a bunch, they usually end up dropping off after a couple of threads. I mean, fuck, I go in and look, and some of them only have like 2 or 3 players like actually playing.
And people still go along with that. It's very impressive. But I think everyone's going to end up moving to Anonkun, and Anonkun, if Cass doesn't get his shit together, is going to end up dying as well eventually.
I mean, the
And
longest...
will be fucking space battles, and sufficient velocity, and questionable questioning.
With what we've seen, though, can we really rely on Cass getting his shit together?
No. That's why I said it's going to die.
I mean, I hope he will, and I wish he will, but like realistically, I know the likelihood of that happening is low. I just
think
hope
it's more
in my heart of hearts.
realistic for someone from Anonkun to like take the idea of the site and do it much better and steal everyone from Cass.
Yeah, we just need a good Uncle Moneybags to get that done. I generally agree with E in that basically I think questing is going to just slowly shrivel to death on 4chan, and then by that point there'll probably be like a slow trickling of players to Anonkun. And then if Cass doesn't get his shit together, then it'll just kind of dissipate, and you'll be left with a couple of islands like space battles and whatnot, and whatever quest boards are on 8chan that are just even worse than QST, but some of those people are just too stubborn to die.
I mean, it's too stubborn to die. You know, you can live a long time on that. Just look at... I mean, the longest running quest ever never had more than like 5 players. What was it called? For House and Dominion, right? It was
Jeez,
run for like...
ridiculous.
It's
It
run
has its
for
own
like...
wiki and so on, yeah. Dedicated fucking players.
It's been run like 8 years or something.
Not that long. It's been 5 or so. It started in around 2000. I'll check SubTG. Hang on.
That's just honestly kind of incredible. I mean, honestly, because I
Started in
love...
December 2011, so we're at 5 years now. Yeah.
That's
I
just
was
nuts.
massively exaggerating, but still, that's
Sorry, it
pretty
hasn't been
impressive.
running for 5 years, but it started 5 years ago. It went up to the last start of it was in January 2016, and it seems to have died.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I love this sort of thing. I love questing. It's my favorite pastime. It's kept me sane during college. But I wish that it kind of just it continued an upward trend towards greatness. But
Actually, the latest House and Dominion thread ran December 2016.
Wait, what?
neat.
On what point? Was it on QST?
I'm looking at SubTG here. Tags House and Dominion. Latest one ran 7th of December.
That's 9 days ago.
Oh, it's not. It's for House and... Okay, fuck you, SubTG. It didn't show me... Okay, fuck off. I have no idea why searching for House and Dominion didn't give me more threads of this, but that's fucked.
Yeah. So there's gonna be those pockets like that that are too stubborn to die, but prognosis, like honestly, at this point, I don't even know if it's like a coin flip. I'm not that good at predicting the future. I feel like it's a 50-50 whether or not everything just kind of dies or everything just kind of coasts.
Jews are pretty good at predicting the future. Jew.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I guess then it is a 50-50 shot.
Well, I'm a Jew as well, and I have similar feelings. And two Jews can't be wrong.
It basically hinges upon whether or not Kotz will ever get his shit together. Like, honestly, he's the pin in the middle of all this.
So I'm just gonna, in the discussion about Cass getting his shit together, I just wanna point out the fact that when asked about just making Mancom disabled by default and being able to turn it on, he said, "We're not talking about."
That's a very small child you got there.
That's my niece. I've been trying to get her out of the room.
Tell her I said hey.
Tell her a bunch of internet weirdos say hi.
No, fuck him. Tell him I said hey.
I mean, if you insist.
She'll know. She'll understand.
So yeah. What were you saying?
I'm saying.
Said Mancom
Yes.
shows Cass's attitude towards things, basically.
Yeah. I feel
And
like...
that was a fucking debacle.
Oh, it still is a debacle. I'm still...
He came into Spooky to talk about it before he even implemented it, as I recall, or around the time he implemented it. And everyone told him it was fucking moronic and to repeal it.
Just like he was...
And he said, yeah, guys, I'll take that into account. And then he didn't do that. And then I assume he had the similar discussion on Anonkun where everyone told him to fuck off. And he said, yeah, okay. And then he didn't do it.
I feel like he's one of those people that can't really tolerate not having creative control. So he feels like,
I don't think he gives a shit about like anything anyone wants him to do. He's no interest in Anonkun beyond what he's interested in, basically. That doesn't make much sense, does it? But he's not interested in something or other. Okay, just someone else talk. I'm really out of it today.
That's fair. No, I feel like he's the sort of person that thinks all of his ideas are kind of genius and feels like
that as well.
And feels like everyone who thinks that he's wrong is just kind of they're not getting it. They don't really understand. And I don't resent him for that. I just kind of feel sorry for him, honestly. Because he has this site and probably most of the people on it, his own community, probably actively dislike him. Which has got to sting a little. Mm-hmm. If he's not too oblivious to notice, that is. So, there's another question to go at. Spuds. Oh, hey, Spuds. Spuds asks, did you consider ever using your ability to make money instead of quests, possibly by getting into the web novel industry? So whoever wants to field that can...
What ability? I can't write for shit.
I don't know, do web novels, even make, enough money to be worth
Off
Doing?
Patreon, you can make a decent amount of money, but you have to be able to attract.
Most money make money of self-publishing the novels after they've built up a base. They make quite a bit of money of that. A lot of professionals, like professionals as in not as in they're any good, but professionals as in they live off of it.
Yeah, but you need to actually be quite popular to get anywhere.
Yeah, I
As
know.
Alani said in chat.
I know at least one web novel that got kind of successful is the Valhalla trilogy by Ari Bach, the person who runs Facts I Just Made Up. But again, that's the sort of thing that, as someone mentioned in chat, you basically have to be popular enough to springboard off of that, so that you'll be able to make anything. Yeah, as someone else said, why would you even try to make money off this shit when you can just make money on being a computer engineer?
Well, you could be Japanese, as Kappa says, and then you've got a good shot of turning a web novel into a light novel, and into a manga, and into an anime, and so on.
Well, it's not just that. It's also the Chinamen and the Koreans are making making money off of that stuff. But the way they're doing it is they have an attitude over in China when it comes to making novels, which work very well on the web. Like, what they do is that they go for amounts, like they go for regular posting. They try and hit certain regular times, and they try and write huge amounts to push out regularly, like once a week, once a day, stuff like that. And as long as you go regular on the net, you'll make money. It'll happen. Or you'll get popular, rather, not make money. And that's true of quests as well. All quests which update on like every week at the same time are going to get players. It's just gonna happen. It's a fact of the internet.
On the topic of making money on the internet, if you want to go max profit, just sell your soul and write furry food and stuff, because those people pay like wicked amounts of money for you to cater to their fetishes.
It's mainly if you draw shit, I think. If you're a writer, you're fucked.
Tell that to Phenoxo.
You're less.
He also made a game, though.
Yeah,
so you're gonna have to learn to program as well.
But the thing that's not. Grimmand is right. You don't need it. There's an entire industry which is based for paying by the word, and it pays pretty well. If you can produce shit, then you can find a place in those circles. If you can just pump shit out, and they'll pay pretty good by the word.
There's also those people who just write like Amazon Kindle erotica and just pump out like a new story about the same goddamn sex topic.
Tingle.
Yeah, like Chuck Tingle.
Pounded in the butt, buy my book. Pounded in the butt, buy my book. Pounded in the butt, buy my book. Pounded in the butt, buy my own butt.
Yeah, like honestly, sex sells. It's probably why waifus are a phenomenon, but it's also why just the most lucrative form of writing on the internet, the self-publishing, is probably just pumping out shitty erotica on the internet for middle-aged women. I mean, look how much fantastic success 50 Shades of Grey is, and that's literally an adapted fan fiction. Typos intact. It's horrible.
Well, some of the typos were fixed, but no, but sure, yeah, she made a lot of money doing that, and you got to respect that, don't you?
No.
I mean, I respect it insofar as much as I'm intensely envious.
I mean, you're a Jew. It's inevitable.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. But I respect that she got lucky enough for her fan fiction to be the one that got published, turned into a media empire. But I'm just like angry and confused because out of all the things, there's just so much better stuff out there. And it's just so boring.
You gotta be brave, man. Gotta believe.
I don't believe in shit.
That too is the essence of Jewishness.
19-minute warning.
Yep. So I figure now is probably a good time if anyone wants to ask us some quick, stupid questions. We could field
There
those
was
and then
one.
sign off.
Would you date anyone from aCowboy?
I date me. Just kidding.
I mean, I'm sad and alone, so I'd probably try.
Oh, wait, are we talking about QMs or are we talking about, like, quest characters?
I think we were talking about QMs, but
Okay, that's what I thought.
You do you.
No, fuck, oh god, no, fuck aCowboy Writer.
Yeah, fuck all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, man, fuck those guys. Writing things on the internet.
Is that the one included in the sticky? Because if not, then probably not.
Yeah.
I was there when Ko wrote it, and I didn't bother reading it. I probably should at some point.
No, it's
probably not.
It's not that useful. It's kind of shitty.
I could do a better one,
questing.
probably.
I could do a better one, and I'm not even that great at questing.
I've never written one. I could do a better one.
Alright. Coke or Pepsi?
Yes.
Coke.
I don't
Cocaine.
even drink soda anymore.
Look at me. I'm better than all you.
Oh, look at me. I'm not dying of cancer and fatness.
I'm not saying I'm better than anybody or not. I'm just saying I don't drink soda anymore.
Are you thinking it, though?
No, not really.
No.
I have fairly low self-esteem. It takes a lot for me to think I'm better than somebody.
Oh, well, that's pathetic, then.
Yeah.
I mean, I like ginger ale.
I have type 1 diabetes, so I can't really drink that stuff unless I put a couple of hours away just for that and keeping my blood sugar intact.
Reverse traps?
Got you and diabetes. You really shafted, huh?
Reverse
Obviously, the only real answer to Ilwar's question, traps or reverse traps, is yes.
okay.
Reverse traps.
Yeah, reverse.
They're cutie.
I'm very solidly a reverse trap person. Mostly because androgyny is my thing, and reverse traps tend to be more androgynous than masculine.
Because, I mean, really, traps are always just literally girls with, like, dicks. You never... I don't know, I just feel so lazy.
Like, it's easy to make a trap look like a girl, but it's hard to make a reverse trap look like a guy, like a dude. And they'll just look like an androgynous, slender guy, which is my type, thankfully. So the answer is definitely reverse traps for me. Catbus says, recite such defiance without laughing.
I could do it.
Such defiance.
No, that's not it, you fuck.
Are we saying the word? Okay, the paragraph.
No, it's the paragraph I posted.
Right there. Oh my god.
It's from Joker Quest.
You know what? Appear to be... Oh, no, someone else do that.
I'll do it.
Okay, go.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Appear to be brooding over her decision not to tell us. Finally, stand up and take her hand. Such defiance! As punishment, I demand that you come share some drinks with me at a nice little cafe I know, and to tell me more about yourself. You've set up your mystery too well. I cannot leave without knowing more about you. Shuckle and lean in as if to kiss her hand. A few inches away, tilt your head to look at her. Is that a fair enough punishment?
That's the worst thing I've ever had to listen to. Like, not because of your voice.
I had to go change my panties.
It's the best writing.
Your voice is incredible. I mean, that's just the worst content I've ever had to listen to when I listened to Aphex Twin.
I mean, think about it this way. At least it wasn't Dewey's fan fiction that he was trying to get people to read live.
We should do a dramatic reading of that sometime. Just kidding. Dewey can fuck off.
Okay, does it count as character gen if you, like, do it throughout the quest, or...
Yes,
I guess so,
that's just good character generation.
Because that's what I did. Like, I let them choose her first name, right? Because I figured that was a good first step. I didn't know that was really... But that turned out okay. But otherwise, I, like, let that happen throughout the story. Because, like, what all do they need to know right at the beginning? Like, why bog them down with information or whatever? That's
exactly.
What's your favorite verb and why? TDS asks. Mine's simple. Mine's fucked. I love fucked as a verb. It's just so
I have
effective.
absolutely no idea.
You guys
Probably
never
something
thought about
similarly
this?
insulting. No, I don't have autism.
I have extreme autism, and I don't actually have a favorite verb, but I have a favorite adverb, and it's extremely autistic, objectively.
So your
It's
favorite
objectively
adverb
shit.
is extremely autistic?
Oh, wow, that was shit. I considered it, but I passed up on it myself. I'm surprised you actually went for it. You got some low standards, man.
I have no standards
Guys,
whatsoever.
we have like 5 minutes. We've gotten
Yep.
through like one question. You guys suck.
We've gone through more than a handful of questions.
Like 3.
Okay, how
Okay,
about
let's
this
go
one?
really
one.
quick.
How about this one?
How did you choose this genre? One word.
Didn't.
Polling.
That's my answer.
Okay, great. Why did you start QMing? Give me one sentence.
My friend got me into it. Fuck him.
That was one set. Oh, wait, you said sentence, not word?
I don't even
sentence,
know
go.
what you just said.
I wanted to do a thing.
I've read quests for a long ass time, and I gotta do it write one someday.
What's another question here? How often do you run or wish you'd run? Also one sentence.
I wish I could run every week. I run once a month, basically.
Constantly and slow.
As often as I can, which is not often enough.
Once a week on the dot.
If you were a king or queen, what would you want your title to be? King. That's simple.
Like a long flowery title. I have no fucking idea. I wouldn't want a title.
I'd probably come up with some random bullshit, and then just like whenever somebody called me that, just refuse to acknowledge them.
Ever since I read what's his face, Machiavelli, I've always wanted to be called Il Principe.
Wow, you really are autistic.
He is.
It's okay. You're amongst friends. Alright.
If you had to fuck a QM, who would it be?
Yeah, I think that'll be the last question. I'll let everyone else answer before I answer. If you had to.
I'd fuck Joker Quest OP, just so I could find out which gender they were finally.
That's a good decision, honestly.
All of them at once.
That's what I call lewd.
I want 2 years worth of semen all at once.
What? What?
Wow.
Sword Art Online DMC. That's the reference.
I mean, I don't know. I'd probably fuck me.
You'd fuck you can't fuck yourself.
Wait, like you just like fuck yourself like as one person, or there'd be 2 of you?
That's the question, isn't it? Okay, I mean, like,
would you bend your dick backwards or I suppose downwards?
Actual trick answer to the question is that I'd fuck GFC because technically she started a quest, and then the actual
have trick answers. That's true.
Actual answer is probably Joker Quest OP.
Okay, good.
Plop plop.
I'd do Sleepy for the same reasons, basically.
That's fair. Anyway, I think that's about it for today's episode. So, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to catch us again next week at 6:00 p.m. EST. I'm DM-Casual. Yeah, hopefully it'll be better. I'm DM-Casual. I'm signing off for the night. Good night, everyone.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Well,
See ya,
this
people.
went better than it could. Not as good as it went better than it could have.
Wait,
But
no, slow down.